Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, Vladimir Tarasenko, you are an Ottawa Senator.
Woo! How is he going to fit into this group of the Sens core? What line will he play on? Who will he play with on the power play? So much to get into here.
And also, how's he going to fit in financially? Gets a $5 million contract. What kind of cap space is left? We'll get into all that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome inside episode 848 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. A reminder that you can like and subscribe wherever you download your podcast. We're also free and available on YouTube. Today is Thursday, July 27th, and Pillsy, Vladimir Tarasenko, 1 year, $5 million. If this had happened on Canada Day, how close is it to the top story?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could have been one of the top stories. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Vladimir Tarasenko was the best remaining UFA up to this point, and the Sens grabbed him. So it's an awesome feeling. What a time to be a Sens fan after years of, bottom of the barrel free agents, veteran defenseman signings to multiple years, bungled trades, trying to make this move. And now it seems like the Ottawa Senators not only are making the proper moves, but they're making kind of like, for me, Ross, this almost seems like a bonus move. Like, I was prepared to go into the upcoming season without Tarasenko and with the roster they had. Now, was I totally stoked about it? Maybe not, but I thought there was definitely a good roster up ahead. And then adding Tarasenko just puts another sniper into the mix. Like, say what you want about Tarasenko, and last season maybe wasn't his best. I mean, mind you, there was some injuries that happened as well, but this is a guy that's only one season removed. Like, the year before last, he had 82 points in 75 games. Like, this guy can still get the job done, and he's a consistent 30 goal scorer and one of the most elite wrist shots in the entire league. So anytime you can add that guy to your team, that's a good sign.
Also getting a guy with a Stanley Cup on his resume with the St. Louis Blues in 2019. He also co-led that team in goal scoring with Jaden Schwartz, 14 goals during the St. Louis Blues' improbable run to the Stanley Cup. 11 goals in 26 games that season, 90 shots in the 26 games. That's what you're getting with Vladimir Tarasenko. You're getting a shooter. You're also getting a player who, like a lot of the Russians, plays his off wing. So you're getting a right winger who shoots left. How do you think that'll impact where he plays in this lineup? Because now the right side's pretty loaded all of a sudden after years of being a weak spot up front.
Yeah, obviously my initial reaction to the Tarasenko news was excitement. And then a minute later, I'm like, okay, I start doing the premature lineup projeculations, as Williams Marshall likes to call it, and trying to fit where this guy's going to go. And Ross, I got to be honest, I couldn't really pick one spot that felt right. And I jumbled the lines different ways. And, this is one of those good problems. I think anywhere you put him, I think you could have success, but I'm not quite convinced I have the perfect spot for him just yet.
The only problem with me being so firm on keeping the top line together is now I'm limiting myself.
Yeah, I've come off that, Ross. I think Brady, Timmy, and Giroux is probably not going to happen anymore.
I don't know if I like that.
No, I don't know if I like it either, because the thing is, we'll get back to Tarasenko, but I really feel like Norris and Tkachuk could use a winger that could take faceoffs for them. And if you put Tkachuk and Giroux together on no matter what line it is, you're using both those options in one line. So I don't know.
I'm so curious, and something we're going to get into in the third segment is how this affects Shane Pinto. The lone one-way expected forward without a contract. Igor Sokolov still needs a contract as well. But when it comes to Shane Pinto, could you almost use Tarasenko as a convincing factor for him to take a 1-year contract, saying you're either playing with Batherson or Tarasenko this year, sign 1 year at a more limited salary, and then next year the numbers should pop theoretically, a year older and a year more experience after burning a year and then missing a year. He's only played 1 season through his entry-level contract. Yeah. I wonder if that goes into the negotiating, but either way, it seems like somebody's going to have to be on the way out, with Vladimir Tarasenko making $5 million, leaving the Senators with about $32,000 in cap space. When's the last time they had $32,000 in cap space? This is an unbelievable kind of mind-bending situation that started last year with Claude Giroux. This is back-to-back seasons where a legit free agent comes to Ottawa.
Yep.
Vladimir Tarasenko reportedly turned down contracts from the Carolina Hurricanes, the San Jose Sharks, and I believe I'm missing a third team there as well.
I think I heard Florida.
Okay. Well, how's Florida got any cap space?
Yeah, so maybe there wasn't anything there. And I think Habs fans were trying to pump up that they were in the running too. But that could have been the case, because I think Vladimir Tarasenko, what he's trying to do this year is kind of the Taylor Hall to Buffalo type deal. All right, I can't find the long-term deal I want. I can't find a proper fit. There's no cap space left for me in certain teams. So I'm just going to get a 1-year deal at a decent dollar amount and try to put myself in a good position to succeed, to get a better contract later on. But I want to go back to Pinto quickly, because
let's save it. Let's do Tarasenko. I want to do a full segment on Shane Pinto, because
yeah, honestly, there's a lot to get into. Okay, I'll save it.
You can't talk about this Tarasenko signing without that. So I understand where you're coming from, but let's let the fans know what kind of player Vladimir Tarasenko is going to be for this Senators team. I don't think anyone caught my my joke here on Twitter. As I set it up, I will say Brady Tkachuk tweeting out Tarasenko show back in 2015. Grew up a St. Louis Blues fan. How's a little honeymoon gift for Brady Tkachuk getting to find out that Vladimir Tarasenko is coming to town?
Yeah, I mean, that's all the players have to be buzzing right now. Like, if I could see, I would love to see group chats from them. Just like, all right, here comes Vladimir Tarasenko, a consistent 30-goal scorer. And like I mentioned, like, honestly, one of the best wrist shots in the entire league. And I was watching his highlights, his Ranger highlights, which wasn't a whole lot of games. But I totally forgot about him pulling the Forsberg move on the Sens. Like, this guy is not just a sniper. Like, he's got soft hands. I think a lot of people are kind of undermining his playmaking ability as well. That's the thing. Like, with such an elite shot like that, I feel like teams and defensemen, they cheat on his shot a little, and then he's able to make a nice play to set up an open man. So I just think with Tarasenko, look, I don't want to say definitively he's going to replace Alex DeBrincat's goal scoring, but Alex DeBrincat's goal scoring as a Senator, 27 goals, that's pretty doable.
Did you catch this?
Oh, now I see where you're going with here. Those are Alex DeBrincat's numbers.
Yeah, hopefully better than
nice.
Mine 31 there. Dog at the end, right? Come on, that was a dead giveaway there.
Nice, that is good. I like that. Nice. I like it.
Thank you. But who is Vladimir Tarasenko best suited to play with? Let us know in the comments. And by the way, at the end of this show, we are doing a live show. If you're listening to this audio form, you can join us wherever you get your podcast 5 days a week. Locked On Senators, and whenever immediate news breaks, we will be there to take you through each and every step of the way. The comments are flying in. We'll get to them at the end of the show, but we've got much more to get into the fit of Vladimir Tarasenko, some concerns potentially, and more. That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's the #1 sportsbook in North America. And guys, if you're able to, don't walk, run to those FanDuel Ottawa Senators playoff chances. They're still, Ross, before we started this, I did that, and they were at +112. I put a couple units into that. Oh, where's it at now? Is it at the same?
I'm looking right now over at FanDuel. FanDuel is our favorite spot for all this great stuff, and it all matters to who's putting in what. So that means now the Ottawa Senators are still +112, so you can go get that right now. +112. I like that with the Vladimir Tarasenko signing.
I feel pretty good about that. That's for sure. So you can bet futures. hockey, basketball, football, lots of futures to get into. Or if you want some immediate reaction, baseball is happening. You can take your first swing at MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet in bonus bets up to $200. All you have to do is sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Today's episode is brought to you as well by the friends at Shawarma Palace. You know, we love our friends at Shawarma Palace. What better way to celebrate signing Vladimir Tarasenko than going to your nearest Shawarma Palace? There's 7 locations in Ottawa. You're never too far away. But if you're too lazy to go to one, you can have it delivered right to you with Uber Eats. We love Shawarma Palace. They are a day one sponsor. Been a great relationship with them. They do the giveaways throughout the season. And now it's time to pay them back. Let's go in, get fuel filled at Shawarma Palace. You can go on Rideau Street. You can go on Bank Street. You can go in Orleans at Carleton University Food Court. You're never too far away. So eat like a king, eat like a queen. Go to Shawarma Palace, any of their 7 Ottawa locations. Get the extra garlic. You deserve it. Head to Shawarma Palace today. Shawarma Palace, Ottawa on Instagram as well. Head over there to Shawarma Palace. All right, Pilsy. Things I would do for a Shawarma Palace platter right now. Extra garlic. Things I would do. But I'll settle for Vladimir Tarasenko being a member of the Ottawa Senators. Where do you put him? Day one.
Here we go. Right now, this is my top nine. I think the bottom line we're not going to concern ourselves with, and that's pretty much set anyway. So tell me if you love this or hate it. I've got Brady with Timmy and Tarasenko. Then I've got Ridley Gregg with Norris and Giroux. And then the third line of Kubalik, Pinto, and Batherson.
Wow.
What are our feelings on that?
I don't hate it. It's different. I know that I'm a bit of a stickler here wanting Claude Giroux on the top line. I really do. I just had too much fun watching those 3 last year. And I think that you can still make the shifts necessary in the middle 6 to be a good team. I noticed you left out Mathieu Joseph, which could be a tease
weird
to the third segment that we'll get to. But I almost just put maybe.
Yeah, see, this is what was happening to me. I spent 10 minutes erasing, copying, pasting, and moving things around because I couldn't settle on one perfect way. This was the option I felt best with.
I think I'm putting Tarasenko with Pinto on the third line to start.
Wow.
Just to spread it out, because last year the Sens were really top heavy. I think it's fine to have him on the third line.
Here's why I'm not even considering doing that. Pinto had a really tough time playing with Alex DeBrincat and Drake Batherson. Neither of those guys very good defensively. If there's one knock on Vladimir Tarasenko, it's that he's all offense and not even just not good defensively, but a bit of a liability defensively. So I would hate to I don't want to say anchor, that's the wrong word when you're adding a 30-goal scorer, but I would hate to put more defensive responsibilities on Shane Pinto by putting a guy like that on his line. That's why I even hesitated to put Batherson and Pinto together, because for whatever reason, that just didn't work last year. But my mind shift to that was in a third line role that might work a little bit better.
But I don't know if Kubalik's the answer on the third line. Then maybe you'll want.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But my kind of idea was get him on that third line, so maybe that's not they're not going up against other teams' top 6.
I like the idea of Ridley Gregg with Josh Norris and Claude Giroux.
See, I more did that to get him with Claude Giroux. Like Claude Giroux seemed like Ridley Gregg's uncle. Like he was doing everything to help that kid out. He was trying so hard to get him his first goal. It seemed like those two guys really got along. We know Ridley Gregg's kind of Philly connection with his dad playing there a long time. So I just think that that's a duo that could work. And I'm really stuck on this idea of having one of Giroux or Brady with Timmy and Norris. I don't think you can afford to have Timmy and Norris without one of those guys available to them.
Yeah, That's fair. Looking back at last season for Vladimir Tarasenko, his most common line mates were Robert Thomas when he was in St. Louis and Mika Zibanejad when he was in New York. It was actually Zibanejad, Panarin, and Tarasenko. So he's no stranger to playing with the team's best players, and I think that could be a fit. I'm sure Brady would love that because I did some reading on Tarasenko where he's the type of player, because he shoots so much and so accurately, that he creates so many rebounds that he almost helps his other teammates get better shooting percentages. And who better than Brady Tkachuk to have that increased opportunity around the net?
That's why I got him there. And Ross, I don't think Vladimir Tarasenko and his agent would be pretty stoked if he landed on the third line on the Ottawa Senators.
It's fair. I mean, that's just trying to spread out the wealth. And I do think Batherson's going to have a much better season than he did last year without kind of the ankle bothering him as much as he said it did early parts of last season. So I guess that's fair. I mean, Giroux's not playing out of the top 6. So for me, it's either Batherson or Tarasenko. And it's good problems to have, just like on defense, right? We had that great poll the other day that we'll talk about on tomorrow's show briefly and just the results of it. But I'm just happy that they have so many more options now. What does this mean to you before we get into who could be out? Like, does this put a lot more pressure on the Järventie, Sokolov, Crookshank trio? Because somebody has to be taken out of this group that's making over $1 million. So it can't be an entry-level guy. One of them has to be a productive bottom 6 player next year.
I think this really hurts Igor Sokolov right now, especially without a contract. Sokolov he's not a guy that makes sense on the fourth line. I'm sorry. He's not able to do what he needs to do in 7 minutes and playing with guys like Casty and Kelly. It's just the truth. Like I'm not trying to offend anyone or put labels on anyone. I just think that is the truth. He's not going to succeed there. He needed an opportunity to play on the third line. I don't see a scenario where he beats out many of those guys, except the one guy I had bounced up was Ridley Gregg, but
right.
Ridley Gregg is a guy I could see playing on a second line. Igor Sokolov, I don't think the Ottawa Senators are comfortable having him in a top 6 with the caveat being with additions of Kubalik and Tarasenko after moving to Brinket out. If those guys weren't there, maybe, but with Igor without a contract right now, man,
I know it's tough.
I feel for him because that's tough.
Yeah, watching basically a similar type player in terms of the style. I'm not saying that he has the resume of Tarasenko. It would be impossible to, but it is a tough moment unless you figure somebody has to be on their way out. Maybe that opens up the opportunity once again. But
even with somebody on the way out, Ross, there's not a lot of room in this top 9 anymore.
I mean, there is a world where he can beat out Zach McEwen and play on the fourth line. He knows going to camp what kind of player he needs to be. If I'm Igor Sokolov and I get to camp, I'm running someone in the first game. I'm hopefully creating a opportunity to drop my gloves and show that I can answer physically. Let's remember, this DJ Smith's still the head coach of the Ottawa Senators. He needs to get DJ Smith's attention, and that's how. He needs to go and remember Chris Neal, the first shift of every game, he would run someone through the end boards.
Yeah.
It was just like clockwork. He needs to be that guy. He's got the frame to do it, but can he hunt guys down on the forecheck and be aggressive and do that? If he can, 6'4", 215, that's the type of player that, in terms of a stereotype or a prototype rather, DJ Smith would love to have on the fourth line, but he has to trust him in that role. You could do worse on the fourth line than having Kastelik and Sokolov if they can both be in your face offensive forecheckers. And that's what Igor has to do in training camp. He's not going to come in and go bar down on the power play and get those opportunities. He's going to have to earn them. And this is a good problem. I want to say it's from success that creates this. It hasn't been, but it's been success of bringing guys in that now it's not as easy to get a job as it was last year before. And that's just the cycle that the Sens are in right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I have the utmost confidence that Igor could beat out some of those players to get on the fourth line, but I feel like you're capping him at that point. You're not really getting to his full potential, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and Graham putting in the comments saying he's been told his whole life he needs to work on skating, not hitting. If I'm having a conversation with Igor and being like, hey, I'm going to give you the contract that you deserve here, but in exchange, you need to know how we need you to play.
Yep.
this is your contract to work for us, but as the boss, I'm saying you need to play this way. And the shot's not going anywhere with Igor, right? Like, he could still create offense like that.
Definitely.
Heck, Mark Kaslick scored 50 goals in junior. He could be a guy that's around the net buzzing, and you get that.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't get any fourth line offense except for against Detroit last year. Austin Watson turned into Gordie Howe. Like, that's the only time that they got offense. But let's get back to Vladimir Tarasenko and what it means for the Senators cap situation. Pilsy, it's a good problem to have, but it's certainly something new as an Ottawa Senators fan being against the cap. So how can the Ottawa Senators be cap compliant and still be able to ice as competitive as a team as we think they can now with Vladimir Tarasenko in the fold? That's all coming up next. You are listening to Locked On Senators. All right, you're the Locked On Senators, wherever you get your podcasts. And shout out to the 600 people who are joining us live here as we break down Ottawa Senators news on a Thursday evening at the end of July. There's no other fan base like it. Like, come on.
Yeah, everyone in the chat, this is awesome. You guys know we love some of our favorite stuff is doing live immediate reactions, and the more people here, the chat is absolutely buzzing. So this is awesome. We can't thank you guys enough.
So what the heck are the Sens doing with $32,000 left and Shane Pinto and Igor Sokolov to sign?
I think this is of all the questions and things we're trying to work out, this is the easiest answer for me, and I don't have any doubt in my mind about this. Matthew Joseph's days as an Ottawa Senator are all but over, in my opinion. I think the writing is on the wall. Like, you can't. Pierre Dorion stuck his neck out making that Nick Paul deal, and he even said it. He wasn't really interested in trading him. Wasn't really feeling it. And then Matthew Joseph came in the conversation, and all of a sudden they had a deal like that. And what does he do? Gives him a nice 3-year deal right away. And Matthew Joseph had a terrible season. And I know some people are trying to prop up his season with advanced analytics, but even those aren't that great. Ross, we dug into it a little while ago when we were doing our organizational value rankings, trying to decide where he's going. And
he was one of our most contentious of where to rank, because I was like, man, like, he's already an NHLer, and you're like, yeah, but he had as many even strength goals as you and I last year.
Yeah, and he's getting a pretty good contract. And look, that's not to say I don't believe in Matthew Joseph. We've seen what he can do. When he came to Ottawa, he was popping off. He has all the skills. He's a young player still. He's got good size, good speed. I really believe that he can be a good player. It's just, it didn't work out. And look, the Ottawa Senators are making it clear. Like, I feel like most teams would have cleared the cap space, then done this. The Ottawa Senators are doing this in reverse order. And I do think there's some strategy to this, but at this point, like, I know people in the comments are saying Branny. I think that would be such a mistake to move Branny right now. Like, look, you have Joseph, a guy who you just acquired a winger for, and he's just had a terrible year. You need to move him on a down year. The answer is not to move Brandstrom, who just had a big year for his standards and is not a winger that you've replaced, right? So that, I don't know. I'm completely out on the idea of moving Brandy to clear cap space. I just think that would be such a bad move. Because look, where do we finish with the forwards if Joseph stays? You're going to have Joseph making $3 million playing on the fourth line?
Yeah. You know why? Because you got to have somebody who wants to take him, and I'm done giving away draft picks to mop up mistakes.
Yeah, I look, obviously you don't want to do that, but I don't give a damn about draft picks, Ross. This team is trying to make the playoffs. I don't care about draft picks. And for everyone saying, oh, Dorion's a terrible GM, look at all these mistakes he's made. Yeah, you're going to make mistakes as a GM. You got to take risks. It's not always going to work out. And look, for every blunder and every mop-up trade he's made some pretty damn good ones that have worked out well for this team as well. So I just feel like, look, I would rather two wrongs don't make a right. Like, I would rather you clear up that wrong and get rid of it rather than add on another issue and or take away a positive just so you don't have to do a take away a negative here, right? I don't know, maybe I jumbled that up, but that I thought that made sense in my head.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just think that they've done it enough that I think there's a fair chance that Mathieu Joseph bounces back, and there's going to be injuries that he could be one of those guys where if he does at least bounce back a bit, which he has to have more than zero. Even
I mean, you can't get any less.
Zero. He has to. But so that said, there's going to be injuries. Let him move up and down the lineup and be a guy who can be at speed on the fourth line, kill penalties. You certainly didn't bring in a penalty killer as Tarasenko, so you still need guys like that. And it's not what Branny can't do. Is Tyler Kleven just going to go into camp and take the job?
Okay, that's a great point, but I will immediately flip that on you. We just talked about Igor, Sokolov, Ridley Gregg. There's so many more better options to replace Joseph at forward than there is better options to replace Branny at D.
I don't know about that, though.
Kleven's played 7 NHL games.
And he's looked pretty damn good.
In 7 NHL games. This isn't me saying, this isn't me being anti-Kleven.
No, of course. But there's also other options. Like, it doesn't have to be Kleven. I think that their defensive depth on the left side is pretty decent, no?
I mean, decent as in getting a guy to play bottom pair minutes, yes. But that's not, Branny's upside isn't that he's just a bottom pair defenseman. Branny's upside is the versatility. I've gone over this several times. Like, he can play left, right side. He can move up and down the lineup for short spurts. Like, and if anyone wants to argue that, go to Natural Stat Trick and look at the defense pairing advanced analytics. Every single player that Branny's played with has good Corsi numbers. Like, it's not a gimmick. It's not a fluke. Like, everyone does well with Brandstrom. So he can play penalty kill. You can put him on the power play. I'm not saying he's the best at all these things, but he's so versatile and a young defenseman. I think it would be such a mistake to get rid of him. And the thing is, I think other teams around the NHL can see Mathieu Joseph and be like, look, this isn't a bust player. We can make him work in our system. That's what the Ottawa Senators did. And I do believe if Joseph was to move on, he could have success somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because if you're trading Branny, you're only getting back picks. And what do they need? What do they need the picks for? No,
you're right. And in a perfect world, they keep them both. I don't know how possible that is.
Yeah, but I think it's impossible. It literally is impossible because then you can't sign Pinto.
Well, right now, the projected cap space for the Ottawa Senators is $895,000. They've added Tarasenko. So 32,000. I don't know where I got that, but let's turn the page on it. It's 895,953. So with that, all of a sudden, and I'm not saying this is what they do, but they could literally, they're one of their cheapest players is Jacob Bernard-Docker or Zach McEwen. If those guys go on waivers, then aren't you able to get it? Yeah. And qualifying offers dead after, I believe it expires after a certain point.
Yeah, it does. I think 2 weeks.
Yeah. So somebody's got to go.
Yeah, somebody's got to go because there's no way the Ottawa Senators go to Pinto in his camp and say, hey, we only have $800K left. Here's a 1-year $800K deal. They wouldn't sign it.
No, I don't think so either. But I do think there's something to be said about Shane Pinto only playing 99 NHL games. He has no leverage. He needs 2 more seasons for arbitration. He has no leverage at all.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to touch on earlier. I think that was a really smart move by the Sens too, because I always thought it was going to be they're going to sign Pinto and then figure out what to do with the free space. But what they've done is they signed Tarasenko, and now they're going to Pinto and being like, hey, you're an RFA. We've filled our roster. We want you on this team. Here's what we can give you. Take it or leave it. And there's not, like you mentioned, there's not a lot of leverage, but that's the thing. When the players are RFAs, the teams have to flex their leverage. They have to use it. Even if you got to be a bit of a dick to do it, you have to do it. Because as soon as they're UFAs, those players get the leverage and they get the power, and they can be dicks, and they can be flexing their leverage to get what they want. And that's fine. That's how the system is set up. So I think that was the proper way to do it for Pierre Dorion.
We'll see what's next. There's a lot of interesting options. I have 2 more questions here, and then we're going to get to the comments, and then we'll touch on this more as things develop, because now the next week or 2 has become super interesting because something has to change before Shane Pinto can sign an extension with the Ottawa Senators. Who is the more impactful signing this offseason, Joonas Korpisalo or Vladimir Tarasenko?
It's Korpisalo. That's an easy answer for me.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Over under 22 goals for Vladimir Tarasenko next year.
Over. I would even set that higher, like at least at 25.
Okay. Now, my final question, how much, if any, did the situation with Matt Murray in Toronto impact this signing? Because I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened the day after.
I don't think it's a coincidence either, Ross. And that's what we talked about. That's why we followed along with a Toronto Maple Leafs goalie arbitration case so closely, because it had major impacts. And like, look, I almost don't even want to say it, but if the Leafs did buy out Murray and you saved that 1.3, you got 2.1 to sign Pinto to a 1-year deal. You can get that done for sure. So this definitely changes things. It definitely changes things.
This changes things in a big way. And any final thoughts for you, Pilsy?
Final thoughts for me is I'm just excited that we're having good problem discussions, Ross. Like we haven't had to have good problem discussions in a long time. It's mostly been us having kind of resentful, pessimistic discussions about how terrible and how kind of non-impactful the Sens moves have been. So this is a refreshing change for us.
And this is refreshing too, because Vladimir Tarasenko spoke with several players several weeks ago. This isn't new. And his question to, I'd imagine, Brady Tkachuk, among others, is how serious are you about winning? How serious are you about winning? There is no excuses left for this Ottawa Senators team.
No, none at all. And these guys are like, Brady Tkachuk has just been on terrible teams his whole career, watching his brother have success, watching everyone else have success. Thomas Chabot, all these guys, they're sick of losing, and they know what they have is good. They've built the right culture. They have all the pieces now. There's no excuse to not have a good team. And Ross, I mean, you got to look at this and think Alex DeBrincat, how serious is he about winning? Ooh. Obviously not that serious, because he did not go to a better situation. Let's be very clear about that. So that's what, when we were talking about DeBrincat, if he wanted out, see ya. We don't want you. Vladimir Tarasenko, you want to win? You want to be here? You're welcome.
Absolutely. Is it a hot take? Okay. You talk about that, and I get it, but now I'm starting to think about Ridley Gregg, and I'm starting to think of, what if the Senators think Ridley Gregg's the third line center next year for the Sens?
So Pinto's out of the plans.
I don't completely? Know. I'm just playing. No. I'm just putting my tinfoil hat on right now.
No, I'm going to squash that right away, because if you're the Ottawa Senators management, you're looking at Tim Stützle, number 1 center, Josh Norris, number 2 center, Shane Pinto, number 3 center, Mark Kaslick, number 4 center. All of those guys are perfect for their roles. You don't want to mess that up.
Yep. No, I like it. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, have some fun here.
Fair.
We're getting a lot of people in the comments, and let's
get to some comments here. Yeah, let's do it.
Well, let's wrap up the show. We'll get to the comments. If you're listening to this in audio form, head over to YouTube and go to 36 minutes into the video, and you will be able to get to the comment corner, postcast style. The postcast can't come soon enough, and we'll have tomorrow's episode in the afternoon, probably around 5 p.m., featuring Stephen Halliday. And now plenty of questions have arisen that we'll have to dive into and get some answers for. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.